Hello, this is Anne-Marie and I'm with Rohini Ross for this episode of Remap Your Life. Rohini has had a varied career. She's an ex-international model. She also currently works with her husband, Angus Ross, and helping couples navigate their relationships. And she also has a podcast called the Rewilding or Rewilders?
Rewilding Love.
Sorry, Rewilding Love.
Yeah.
And so, if you don't mind, Rohini, I'd like to go back to, I think it's before you met Angus. So you are an ex-international model and you appeared on the cover of Cosmopolitan a few times. What led you into that path? Was that something that you aspired to happen, or were you spotted, or how did that happen for you?
Yeah, well, that did happen after I met Angus, and
Okay.
I will blame him. Make him responsible. So it was not something that I had aspired to do. It was actually something that happened in my mid-20s, which is usually quite late if someone's wanting to embark on that career. But I had finished my master's degree in cultural geography, and I had realized that I didn't want to continue on to do the PhD as I thought I was going to be doing. And so I was at a point in my life where I realized I wanted to find something that was more aligned with what I truly wanted to do in terms of my life purpose, what I felt called to do. And so when I originally went to university, my intention was to become a doctor. I'd wanted to be a doctor my entire life, ever since I can remember. And then when I was in my second year of college, I kind of fell apart. I had I think probably my first experience with serious depression, and the coursework that was required for medical school, I didn't like any of it, and I wasn't good at it. And so I went to see a counselor, an academic counselor at that point, and I had done quite well the previous year. And so he seemed to think that I was capable on the academic front of doing it, and that I just wasn't interested in the classes. I don't think he understood the level of mental and emotional suffering I was in at the time. And I probably didn't share that much with him. I don't remember. But basically he said, you either have to just buckle down and do the work, or you should just do the classes that you enjoy. I didn't think it was a choice to buckle down and do the work. I didn't have the bandwidth within me. And I didn't think about getting support around how to help me with organic chemistry and calculus and all of these things. And so I just took the courses that I really enjoyed. And what I was really finding enlivening and educational were the courses I was taking in geography, cultural geography, human geography. Hi. And so I went on to do my master's. I studied in Latin America, did some research there, and wrote my master's thesis, and then realized that I don't have the juice for this anymore. And I really, at that point in time when I was studying in Latin America, I got very sick with parasites. And I went to the Western medical doctors, and they were telling me there was nothing wrong with me. And I knew that I was not myself, and they couldn't figure it out. And so I started a path. That's really where I got into yoga, meditation, natural health, naturopathy. And so it opened up a whole world that I'd never experienced before. And I really fell in love with it. And so as part of that journey, and part of what was to do with my falling apart in the second year of college, I think that part of it was that I had just always learned to kind of not be with my feelings by working hard and looking for external success. And there was a bad car accident that I was in, and I wasn't badly injured. I just had some minor whiplash, but it was one of those moments where I was like, am I going to die? Like, I really thought I was going to die in this car accident. And rather than having sort of this incredible gratitude for life afterwards, I just went on this tailspin. And it was a waking up, but through a dark night of the soul, or a dark night of the ego, as they say. So as part of that, the realization that, based on childhood experiences, based on, the way things played out with my mother and my father, I hadn't had contact with my dad since I was very young, and he left, and I don't know all the ins and outs of it. And there's always two sides or more, in a sense, to a story. But I know he wasn't in my life, and I started to look in the direction of the pain and the suffering that I experienced as a result of that. And I think that was part of what I was coming to terms with, in a way that I hadn't acknowledged that during that time. And so as part of that journey, there was a point here, I had decided that I was going to find him. And he was I knew he was living in England at the time. And so I was living in Canada. And so I decided, when I was doing my research in Guatemala, I got a job at a Guatemalan textile museum in London. And so I had everything set up to move to England after I finished my master's thesis to try and find my dad. And a few months before, in the spring, before I was supposed to leave, Angus and I met. So I wasn't a professional model at the time. I was getting my hair cut for free at Vidal Sassoon in exchange for doing, occasional modeling things for them. And so I'm in the middle of my thesis. My hairdresser says, "Can you come in? We're doing a shoot, and I'd really like you to be part of it. If you get chosen, because you have to get picked." I'm like, "No, I can't do it. I'm sorry. Too busy. I've got this thesis." It was getting down to the wire. I think it was February, and I needed it done by May, and I had a lot to do. And so I'm like, "No, I can't do it." And he said, "Well, we have this really lovely photographer coming from England. I really think you should meet him." And there was something inside of me that's just like, "Okay, I'll come then." Forget about the thesis. And so I went, and it was one of those moments where this is funny. He told me, because I was a student, I didn't really, couldn't afford nice clothes, in a sense, wasn't really caring that much about how I looked. He said, "Come in the back door. You're going to come in the back entrance, and I've got some clothes for you, and we're going to do your hair and makeup. And then you'll, go in front of whoever the people were that we're choosing to see if you can be chosen for this." And so I'm going in the back entrance, I'm walking up the back stairs, and who's coming down the back stairs but Angus? So in the adorned form, we meet. And there was just a really beautiful connection that we both noticed it. There was just a spark that was there. And so that's how Angus and I met. And so I moved to England, and the textile museum that I was working at, it wasn't working out on a couple of levels. One, there were a lot of preservatives used in the materials to keep them, bright and so they don't degrade. And I was allergic to that. I'd get these really bad headaches. And the setup was that I would have free rent as part of my work. That was part of how I was being compensated. And I wasn't really happy with where I was living. And so I said to Angus, I said, "I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what to do. What am I going to do?" And he says, "Well, why don't you just try some modeling, and I can see if I can get, help get you into an agency. Maybe that will help you out since you don't know what to do." And so that was kind of how I fell into it. And it was one of those things where he introduced me to an agency. They accepted me. And then very shortly after that, I was flown to Milan, and Angus thought he would never see me again, because it was like things just kind of took off in a way that nobody was really expecting. So it was by happenstance. It was something that really helped me to have something to do, to earn an income while figuring out what I wanted to do when I grew up. And I'm obviously still figuring that out, but through that was how I eventually, we came to the US through both of us working here in that field. And then I went and did a master's in spiritual psychology. And that sort of was the beginning of me getting licensed as a therapist and starting on this next iteration.
So how long were you working as a therapist before you came across the three principles, or was that part of your education in the spiritual course you were doing?
No, it wasn't. It was, I would say it was looking to our true nature, but it was more psychologically based than sort of the direct path that I see the principles having. And so, gosh, I think, well, it's interesting because I came across the relationship handbook, even before I became a therapist, but I didn't know it was a three principles book at that time. And so it definitely, I would say, pretty much got my relationship with Angus back on track. I read that at a time when things were really difficult for us. We were separated briefly, and I think it really helped both of us. I think he read it too. I know I definitely read it at the time, but it really helped us see how to get over what was going on in our relationship. But it wasn't enough of a grounding to really shore us up in a way where I saw how my experience was created from the inside. I didn't see that as clearly at that point. Then I became a therapist. And so it was probably about 6 years after, 6 or 7 years after working as a therapist, that then I did Michael Neal's Super Coach Academy, because at the time I was feeling burnt out as a therapist, and it was very early on in my career. But I thought, what do I do here at this point? And I wondered if maybe coaching would be a different avenue that would be, easier in some way. And obviously at the time I didn't realize how my relationship with my own thinking, my relationship with my anxiety was really the source of my burnout, and that I didn't need to change careers, that if I understood that, I could have a completely different experience without having to change things on the outside. So I was really fortunate that one of the weekends, it was very early on in Super Coach Academy, and it was only one weekend that was focused on the principles. And George and Linda Pransky came and spoke about it. And I heard something, or I won't even say I heard something, I felt something. I felt different after that weekend. I felt lighter. I felt more peaceful. I had less on my mind. And I knew something had impacted me, but I couldn't understand what had impacted me. I just didn't see it. And it took me a long time for me to really see how, I don't know if how it worked is the right way to say it, but to see what was impacting me, and to see how it really was simply about understanding and awareness. It wasn't about doing anything. And so that started more of a serious journey into wanting to learn more about the teachings of Sydney Banks, and looking in that direction.
So what inspired you to move across from being a therapist to being, I know you said you felt burnt out from being a therapist. So can you think of what caused the leap from you to go from a therapist to a three principles coach?
Well, what was really interesting is that as I started to see where my suffering was really coming from, and recognize that I was just really gripped by a lot of insecure thinking, and I didn't think I was living in a lot of anxiety, that wouldn't have been how I would have described it. I would have seen like, yeah, there's certain situations where it kind of flares up, and that was really uncomfortable. But I didn't see the chronic nature, the habitual nature of my relationship with my anxious and insecure thoughts, and the toll that was taking on me. And so when I saw that, I was actually able to really enjoy what I was doing again. So at that point in time, I wasn't providing direct one-to-one support. I was on the leadership team of a behavioral health company that worked with families with adolescents and young adults who were struggling. And part of my role was doing a lot of PR work for the company. So I was doing a lot of speaking at the time. So that was really helpful for me to get over my insecure thinking so that I could do that more effectively and have more fun doing it. But I had moved into more of a leadership position, and shied away from the one-on-one work because of how I was feeling. And so at that point, when I saw the difference in my experience, I realized that I missed it. And so what I asked for was to work 3/4 time for the company so that I could have a practice on the side. And so I resumed working with clients at that point as a therapist. And it wasn't that I said, oh, I can't do therapy anymore, because you can do therapy from the principles understanding. There's nothing to stop that. But just as things evolved in the work that I was doing, when Angus and I put on the Soul-Centered series, I realized that I needed to just simplify and really look at what needs to change here. And so, at some point along the way, I had left the behavioral health company leadership position, and I was just working as a therapist at that point in time. And then when we did the Soul-Centered series, I realized, well, I'm doing a lot of intensives and work that isn't under the typical traditional therapy framework. And so it made sense to not go into the office 2 days a week to see clients, so that I could focus on the other things that I was really enjoying, such as doing intensives, doing trainings, and doing the Soul-Centered series. And so it was really different than I can't do this anymore and I don't want to do this anymore, to, oh, this is just organically what's unfolding and what feels exciting in my life.
So at what point did Angus, are you business partners now really with your
Yeah,
business?
we are.
So how did that come about, and how would you like to talk about that?
Yeah. So when as part of my wanting to learn more about the principles, I really wanted to learn from George and Linda after being impacted by them in that weekend. And so after finishing Super Coach Academy, I was looking like, how do I learn more? Because that really was one weekend. It was just a taster. And so I did some supervision with Michael, but then I heard about the mentorship program that they offer. And it really spoke to me. And so I actually got to my sort of big realization around insecurity happened even before that. I went up as a guinea pig for one of their mentees and had an experience, a 4-day intensive, and really saw something deeply about how my relationship with the insecure thoughts was really what the problem was. That I was seeing that they were a problem. I was judging myself as not good enough because I felt insecure. And that by simply recognizing it's just human nature to have thought of all kinds of different content, and I don't need to react to it. And I'm certainly not damaged or broken because I have it. And I'm not damaged or broken because of certain emotional experiences that I have. So that just freed me up and had me say, yes, I want to do the mentorship. So as part of the mentorship program, I just was getting so much value out of it. And we were asked to bring our clients. There were 3 different intensives that we could bring clients to. And so I asked if I could bring Angus, not as a client, but as I wanted to use one of those intensives so that he could learn about what I was learning about. And they strongly discouraged me from doing that because they felt that that was me sort of giving up one of those opportunities to bring a client and learn from that experience. But I just felt really strongly that I wanted to share what I was seeing with Angus so that he could feel the benefit as well. And I knew that I wasn't the person to share it with him. And I'd been actually really good about not sort of strong arming him into looking at the understanding or learning about it in the way that I had done previously in a lot of different ways in our life, in our marriage. And so eventually they said, sure, we can do that. And then Angus actually accepted, which I didn't know if he was going to do. And so when he came up and did that, he had a profound experience as well. And George and Linda just really saw something in Angus and really appreciated what how he was seeing things, how he shared about it. And so shortly after that, there was a training happening in Norway where they asked for some of their mentees to go to help facilitate the training. So Angus, I think, had done the training, the intensive, maybe a couple of months before. And then I was invited to go as part of the small group that was going. And they asked Angus if he wanted to come too. And so he thought, I don't know what he thought, but he had this idea that somehow he was just being invited as my plus one. He wasn't going to have to do anything, but he was invited as a facilitator, as a small group facilitator, and they expected him to pull his weight and do what he was supposed to be doing. And so he kind of got thrown in the deep end and just loved it. And so that became his sort of exploration of, oh, maybe I do want to work in this area. And so he had his own journey with that, and really stepped into working as a practitioner. And when I'm trying to remember now, I think how it started with us working together was with trainings. We were being asked to share about the understanding because a lot of people in our community didn't know about the principles, wanted to learn more about the principles. And so we thought, well, why don't we just share what we've seen? And so we started doing trainings together. And I think we both really loved working with each other. It was definitely, I won't say it's always been a bed of roses, and we can certainly get into that if you want to, but in the bigger picture, it just feels really wonderful to be able to work together and support people with experiencing more freedom in their life, less suffering, and for Angus and I to deepen our understanding individually this way, but also to see what the impact is like on our relationship, because we definitely have to walk our talk. And I think that we've grown as a couple as a result of working together as well. So it was kind of this gradual progression. And then I can't remember why or how we started talking with someone who is she was in our Soul Centered series and is a friend, but she wanted to talk to us about our brand. She wanted to talk to us about what we were doing. And so I thought, sure, we'll have a conversation with you about that. And as part of that series of conversations, that we weren't really expecting anything to come from that. We were just sort of open to whatever feedback she might have for us. When we were in conversation with her, Angus had shown me a video that George Monbiot narrates about rewilding and the wolves in Yellowstone Park being reintroduced. And so that came up as out of the blue in one of those branding conversations. And that's really where the idea for the Rewilders was birthed. We just saw how that metaphor of how nature can be rewilded as being so aligned with how we as humans can also be rewilded back to our true nature, and how our true nature wants to be expressed and wants to be known and wants to be experienced in all kinds of ways, and that we often miss that and don't see it. And so Angus and I both fell in love with the metaphor. And it was around the same time that we started working on the podcast. And so again, I got this idea of recording a couples intensive, and Angus has a tendency to sort of lead with a no, shall we say? And so he said, well, nobody's going to want to do that. And I said, well, what if a couple is willing to do that? Are you open to doing that? Sure, I'd be happy to do that. But I just don't think, we're going to get anybody to agree to that. And then shortly after, probably about a month after that, we had a therapist reaching out to us to see if we'd work with a couple. And they just seemed like a really great couple to see if they wanted to participate in this. And so we just asked them, and they were really happy to do it. And they were very generous in that they really understood that we wanted to create something that would help others, ideally not have to go through the suffering that they were going through, the suffering that Angus and I had gone through. And so they said, we're willing to do it if this helps other people have an easier time of it, then we're up for it. So that was where the podcast started to come into fruition. And that took a long time to actually get out there. So it was released last November, and we're just so thrilled with the feedback that we're getting about it. As you said, it's called Rewilding Love. And it's absolutely having that impact of people being able to listen and enjoying the story of it, and understanding the human element of it, but also in a hopefully what we hope is a entertaining and lighthearted way, having a deeper understanding as a result of listening to that couple's journey and sort of the twists and turns that they go on, which were very unexpected for us because, we don't know what to expect when we're doing an intensive and follow-up session. So the rewilding idea and the podcast sort of came to fruition at a similar time. And then from that, we did, last year, we did a 29-day rewilding experience that was just so much fun. And from that, people wanted to continue. So we created the Rewilding community, which is an ongoing community. And, what I really see in the community is the power of the group in helping people to see things more and to heal. And it's really shifted how I see change and transformation can happen, because I think I really looked at it as a one-to-one journey. Now we do offer within the community one-to-one support. So that is part of it. It's really wonderful that because the practitioners in the Rewilding Guide training offer one-on-one sessions, there's the group experience, but there's also if people want to have one-on-one sessions included as part of the community, they can. But I just see that there's a new way of allowing transformation to happen that isn't just a one-to-one model, that isn't about, it's much more of an even playing field, where it's not about an expert or somebody who's sharing something that they've seen, and then that's the way that that impacts someone else, that it can be through a group experience and the people within the group sharing with each other, and all of us really learning and growing together. And it just, to me, feels really exciting because that's so accessible. Like that was one of the commitments that Angus and I have to the community, is that it's not an upselling strategy. It's really a community that we've made accessible by making it affordable, but also having a pay what you can option, so that anybody that's interested and that wants to feel rewilded back to their more natural state of love and have the aliveness and the greater peace of mind and freedom that comes from that, that's available. And it's something that I would hope there would be no barriers toward, other than perhaps technology. That would be the only barrier if someone doesn't have access to that.
So is it mainly for couples you're
No,
rewilding?
it's for individuals. Some couples are in there, but it's for everybody. And the 29-day program that we did last year was not focused for couples either. And even though we do a lot of work with couples, when we look at rewilding, even if we're working with a couple, it's really about each individual being rewilded back to that natural state within themselves, letting go of the conditioning, letting go of the taming. So it's really about our own journey of awakening to who we are. And the byproduct is that areas in our life benefit from that, whether that be our relationships with our partner, our family members, our friends, work, health. There's all kinds of ripple effects, as I know you know, that come from being more deeply connected and aware of who we really are.
I just love listening to you speak so eloquently about it, and I just wondered if anybody else had any questions or any comments for Rohini. I take that as a no. Oh, so you have alluded to, because I have listened to a couple of your podcasts, and when you're talking to Angus, and I've come across this with other couples, since they've come across the three principles, understanding if there's been infidelity in the relationships, that's helped them get through it. And I've had an experience of somebody being unfaithful to me in the past, and at the time, this was before I knew the three principles, I don't think I could have ever forgiven them. So how do you think, with the three principles understanding, a couple can get past infidelity?
Well, I think there's no one way, and there's no requirement to get over it either. In terms of staying together, I would say that whether a couple stays together or not after infidelity, what's important is not carrying the burden of pain and suffering after that, no matter what, whether a couple stays together or not. And so, for me, how the understanding is helpful is that it really points to the internally created nature of our experience. So that's not to say that we shouldn't feel angry, hurt, upset, betrayed when something like infidelity happens. So all of those human emotions are normal and healthy. And one of the things that I have found so healing about this understanding is that it has helped me to see that rather than resist my emotions or try to cut myself off from them through coping mechanisms. I've got much better at allowing myself to feel. And so because the understanding helps us recognize where experience comes from, it helps us feel safer with all of our experiences, all of the emotions. And I think that is profound and important, and something that's not really talked about that much in sort of general growing up, as we grew up or in schools, the importance of not being afraid of our experience. And that was one of the key things that Sydney Banks shared, is that when we see this, we're not afraid of our experience anymore. And so with something like an infidelity or any other kind of trauma, allowing the health of the human psychological, emotional system to do what it needs to do is an important part of that. People often have experienced that with grief. They can tend to recognize how grief isn't really within our conscious control. It comes in waves. We don't really need to manage it or control it. We allow it. And really, we can allow all of our feelings. So to me, that's one of the key pieces, is for people to be able to have that space for their own emotional experience. And in that openness and that freedom, I think it's much easier to hear our own wisdom, to hear our common sense, and to be less driven by our habituated thoughts, less driven by fear-based thinking. It gives us the capacity and that spaciousness to listen more deeply to what that inner feedback might be. And as we follow that, it becomes easier to navigate painful situations in our life when we're able to listen and hear that. And then the other piece that I think is part of recognizing that we're all doing the best we can with the understanding that we have. Like, seeing that allows us to see the psychological innocence of ourselves and of our partner. And to me, that's also very healing, to be able to not carry the weight of judgment. And that doesn't mean that we condone the behavior that was done. It doesn't mean that we have to stay with someone just because we see their psychological innocence. But being able to see that frees us up inside and opens us up to have compassion and empathy for ourselves as well as the other person. And to me, that feels so much better than the weight of judgment, the weight of of carrying that. And so it's not an either or. Like I said, it's not that there won't be judgment, there won't be anger, perhaps there won't be blame. Like, all of that is part of the normal human emotional experience, as I'm saying. But with that, as we allow that to move through us, there tends to be a settling. And from that settling, from that place, we tend to have better perspective, and then we can make better decisions in our life, or make decisions in our life, or take care of ourselves. And so it's not about the outcome of what someone does if they experience infidelity in their relationship, but it is about what direction are they going to be looking in, for their peace of mind, for their own well-being, to be able to have peace within themselves after something like that happens. And some couples choose to stay together and want to move forward and find a way to do that without harboring resentment and ill will. And some couples choose to end the relationship and move on. And I would hope that even when that's the choice that's made, that they're not living with the harboring of resentment and ill will, because that's the price that we pay in an ongoing way after something happens. And it's not about bypassing that, right? So I think it can be misunderstood, what Angus and I talk about, that somehow we're saying just get over it. You shouldn't feel that way. We're absolutely not saying that. We're never saying you shouldn't feel a certain way. We absolutely believe in the health of our emotional system, but we also recognize that with perspective and understanding, we can see how we can amplify our suffering by how we relate to our own thinking. We can have experiences become chronic or persistent, and that really takes a toll on our capacity to experience our natural state and experience the peace of mind that is our natural state. And so there isn't a formula, there isn't an easy way, I would imagine, to ever deal with infidelity in that way. Angus and I have moved through it in our relationship. It was before we came across this understanding, but as I mentioned, the relationship handbook was very influential at that point in time. And if we hadn't stayed together, I know that we'd both be really happy and enjoying life and living fully and vibrantly, and that would be fine too.
That's lovely. I'm going to ask again, is but anybody else has got anything to ask or any? Oh, Alfie, go ahead.
Well, it's really nice to hear a bit about your earlier journey, Rohini, and I resonate so much with the whole kind of, having a breakdown at college and then sort of leaving and starting your own, I don't know, discovery of alternative health things, finding your own way back to health. But something that always really speaks to me when I listen to you is, that when you have that, or say when I have that constant insecure thinking and negative self-talk, and then people often in a kind way want to say you're so hard on yourself, and then it's so easy to start feeling broken for feeling broken, and oh no, I can't even sort out the hard on myself kind of aspect. And what I'm hearing in your wake up that you had with Linda was that you suddenly found a kindness for the part that felt broken about feeling broken, and kind of once you can hold that bit where just everything is okay exactly in the being hard on yourself and everything, then the kindness can step in. And I feel like that's where I'm sort of exploring for myself at the moment. So it's really interesting hearing you speak about that. So I don't really have a question, but just
it's lovely. I know, I love that reflection, and that it feels very accurate what you're saying in terms of my experience, that I really thought that I was broken and that something needed to be fixed. And when I had that viewpoint, everything, whatever self-help book I read, like you said, someone saying, oh, you're so hard on yourself, you shouldn't be so hard on yourself, like that gets plugged into that viewpoint of like, oh, here's another thing that I need to get better at fixing. Here's another thing that I need to look at, how do I love myself, right? Like make a job out of trying to love myself. And so that shift that happened was so pivotal, and it continues to deepen. Like I can just continue to see that more and more deeply, that there's nothing wrong with any of it. Even all the crazy thinking that I was having and all of that, there's nothing wrong with any of it. And what was making it so intolerable was my reaction to it as being wrong. Like that was what was the straw that breaks the camel's back, as they say. And that when I saw that I didn't need to see any of it as bad or see any of it as wrong or see myself as damaged in any way, and not talking about the spiritual essence of me not being damaged. I'm talking about the human psychology of me not being damaged either. That was freedom. And I remember thinking that, when I was thinking it's all about fixing myself. It's all about being happier. It's all about having more happiness. And when I saw this, and this didn't happen right away, it sort of was part of the unfolding of it. But what I realized is like, I'd much rather feel the freedom of being okay with whatever my human emotional experience is giving me than being happy. Like I actually like that a whole lot more than, excuse me, than being attached to wanting to feel happy. And that I felt better feeling bad than I did feeling happy. Like it can sound kind of crazy in that way, but that the knowing that I'm okay no matter what is what really lit me up and has me be a whole lot more comfortable with all of the feelings that come up for me. And as I will say, it's an ongoing, continuing human journey. I'm sure I forget this pretty frequently, but overall, I remember it more and I feel so much more inner freedom that I think is what this understanding really offers, is that greater inner freedom, that greater spaciousness within ourselves to have all of it be okay. And that's where I think the rewilding metaphor plugs in so nicely, because when we look at nature, it's like there's all kinds of things happening in nature, and it isn't always lovely and pretty and beautiful, although it can be, but it's all part of the health of the system when we allow it to do what it needs to do, and that it's unfolding for the greater good when it's following the natural unfolding of the design. And when we get out of the way and allow that to unfold with less barriers to it, the overall health comes up. But if we look at certain parts of that and we're like, oh, I don't want that. But if it's all part of the whole, then we can have room for all of it.
Yes, I think I'm sort of trying to allude to what Alfie and what you were saying about your earlier life. It's like you sort of judge yourself for feeling bad and you're sort of judging your mental state, where, just didn't really judge it, and you're comparing yourself with others as well. Has anybody else got any questions or any comments?
Alfie, did you want to say something? I saw you unmuted.
Oh, yeah. I just wanted to say, there's something so deep in that, like almost like, who am I to judge the hard on myself voice? Because I have no idea how that's fitting into the bigger picture of everything that's working out. And it's like just looking at things and going, and even this can be, and even this is lovable, even this, and just however many broken for feeling broken layers we can get caught up in. It's like, and even this part is lovable and all part of the process. Yeah. Oh, thank you.
That's beautiful. I love how you said that.
Anything else from anybody? If not, I think that's a natural place to end it. And it was lovely speaking to you, Rohini, and thank you for coming.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad you reached out.
See you. Bye.
Thanks, Rohini. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Thanks,
Thanks for
Emma.
joining.
Take care.
Take care.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.